Athens, Greece, March 1987. At exactly 2:37 p.m., the ground beneath the Attica region began to shake. A powerful 6.2 magnitude earthquake ripped through the city, sending shockwaves through streets, buildings, and lives. For most people, it was a terrifying but fleeting moment. For one child, it was the beginning of something no one could explain. In the chaos that followed, amid collapsed walls and abandoned corridors, rescuers discovered a 4-year-old boy inside what had once been a university library. Dust filled the air. Shelves lay broken, and scattered among the ruins were fragments of ancient manuscripts, papers that should not have existed there at all. When the boy finally regained consciousness, the room fell silent, because the first words he spoke were not the words of a child. They were spoken in perfect archaic Greek, not modern Greek, not a learned imitation, but a flawless ancient form of a language, the kind spoken more than 2,000 years ago, preserved only in academic texts and documentaries. What followed would later be described as one of the most disturbing and impossible cases ever documented, a mystery that challenged linguists, neurologists, and historians across Europe, and remains unexplained to this day. The child's name was Nicholas Christopoulos, the son of a local baker and the oldest child in a completely ordinary family. He had no connection to classical studies, archaeology, or ancient history. Before the earthquake, Nicholas was just like any other boy his age, playful, curious, learning to count and draw simple shapes. 3 days after the disaster, Nicholas woke up in an Athens hospital. Physically, he was fine. Mentally, something had changed. His mother, Maria, noticed it immediately. When she looked into her son's eyes, she felt an unshakable unease. There were tears, but also something else, a strange intensity, as if those small eyes carried the weight of decades of experience. Doctors initially believed the child was simply recovering from trauma. But during a routine neurological examination at Evangelismos Hospital, something extraordinary happened. Dr. Yanis Stavros, a senior neurologist, placed a document in front of Nicholas, a test prepared for adults, not children. Without hesitation, Nicholas examined it and continued as if reading a familiar text. "This is from Alexandria," the boy said calmly. "My library was there." The room froze. Dr. Stavros stared at the paper in disbelief. The document was a replica of a funerary papyrus, a text so complex that even he could not fully interpret it. How could a 4-year-old child know anything about the Library of Alexandria? That question was only the beginning. The days following the earthquake were an emotional nightmare for the Christopoulos family. Nicholas had emerged from the coma with only minor injuries, but his behavior was profoundly different. For the first 48 hours, he spoke to no one. He simply watched. Doctors, nurses, shadows on the walls, with a focus that felt deeply unsettling. Then, on the 4th night, Maria heard her son speaking softly in his hospital bed. Not babbling, not dreaming, but holding a clear, fluid conversation, as if someone invisible were standing beside him. Didascal. P tau epsilon theta alpha epsilon pi iota sigma tau rho y psi omega? Teacher, when will I return? Maria stood frozen. Her son was speaking the most ancient form of Greek, a variant she had only ever heard in documentaries about classical philosophy. Nurse Sophia Papadaki, with over 20 years of hospital experience, later said she had never witnessed anything like it. He spoke like a scholar, she recalled. Not like a child pretending, like someone teaching. What truly terrified the staff came next. Nicholas began to draw, not with children's crayons, but with a piece of charcoal he found on the floor. His drawings were not random scribbles. They were precise geometric diagrams. The Pythagorean theorem, the golden spiral, symbols so advanced that several doctors couldn't even identify them. Dr. Stavros knew then that this was beyond medicine. He contacted Professor Dimitris Kaminos, a specialist in classical Greek at the University of Athens. When Kaminos arrived and heard Nicholas recite entire philosophical passages, texts the boy could never have studied, the professor turned pale. "This child is quoting Heraclitus," he whispered, trembling. "Texts that exist in only 3 manuscripts in the entire world. And he's pronouncing them exactly as they were spoken in the 6th century before Christ." There was no longer any doubt. Something extraordinary was happening. But the most disturbing revelation was still to come. 2 weeks after the earthquake, Professor Kaminos made a decision that would change everything. He wanted to test Nicholas's knowledge in a controlled environment, away from the hospital, surrounded by experts. The location he chose was the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, specifically the restricted manuscript hall closed to the public. On April 15, 1987, at 10:30 a.m., Nicholas entered the museum for the first time, holding his parents' hands. What happened over the next 40 minutes was recorded by the museum itself, a video that still sends chills down the spine of everyone who has seen it. As soon as Nicholas stepped into the first gallery, he stopped abruptly in front of a glass display containing ceramic fragments from the 5th century BCE. His eyes locked onto a single piece, an ostracon with barely visible inscriptions. Without anyone asking him a single question, the child pointed and said calmly, "These markings speak of war." Alcibiades was betrayed by his own generals. The scribe who carved this was crying because he knew democracy was dying. The room fell into absolute silence. Dr. Elena Marcoux, the museum's chief curator, felt her legs weaken. That ostracon had been unearthed only 6 months earlier, during a confidential excavation near the Agra. The inscriptions were so faint that even seasoned specialists required magnifying lenses and hours of analysis. "How can a 4-year-old know about Alcibiades?" she whispered to Professor Kaminos. "That fragment isn't even officially catalogued. Only 3 people in Greece know its contents, and Nicholas was just getting started. That fragment wasn't even officially catalogued. Only 3 people in all of Greece knew what it contained. But Nicholas wasn't finished. He walked calmly toward another display case, and without hesitation, pointed to a partially destroyed papyrus. "My teacher wrote this," he said naturally. "It speaks about the soul and its transformations. But the most important part is missing. It's buried beneath the temple." Professor Kaminos felt his eyes fill with tears. He had just witnessed something that defied every known law of logic. And yet, deep down, he sensed this was only the beginning of a day that would change their lives forever. In the months that followed, the Christopoulos family's life was completely transformed. Nicholas developed an unsettling obsession with everything related to ancient Greece. This wasn't childish curiosity. It was something deeper, almost desperate, as if he were trying to remember something vital he had once known and lost. Every morning, Nicholas woke up asking about his papyri. Maria and her husband, Kostas, were at a loss. Their son rejected the toys meant for children his age, and instead spent hours staring at Greek philosophy books borrowed from the local library. What disturbed them most was not that he read them, but how he read them. Not like a child learning, like someone checking for mistakes. "This is wrong," Nicholas muttered one day, pointing at a translation of Plato. "The words about the world of ideas have been changed." "My teacher never said it like this." His parents exchanged worried glances. What teacher? Who was their son talking about? The situation reached a breaking point in July of 1987 when Nicholas began having nightmares. But these weren't ordinary childhood dreams. He woke up screaming phrases in ancient Greek, speaking of approaching fire and the urgent need to save the sacred texts. One night, Maria found him drawing detailed maps of places he had supposedly never seen. "I have to go home," Nicholas told his mother, pointing at one of the drawings. "The oracle is waiting for me. The texts are there, beneath the sacred stones." The drawing was astonishing. It depicted the sanctuary of Delphi with architectural precision. Professor Kaminos, now a frequent visitor to the family, immediately recognized its accuracy. "This child has drawn the exact layout of the Temple of Apollo," he explained, his voice shaking. "He's even marked underground chambers that archaeologists discovered only 2 years ago." The decision was inevitable. Despite their fear, Maria and Costas agreed to take Nicholas to Delphi. The 3-hour drive was tense. Nicholas remained silent the entire way, his eyes shining with an intensity that sent chills down their spines. When they finally arrived at the archaeological site on August 23rd, Nicholas leapt from the car before his parents could stop him. He ran straight toward the ruins, knelt down, and kissed the ancient stones, whispering softly, "I have finally come home." Tears filled the eyes of everyone watching. But what was about to be discovered would exceed every expectation. On the morning of August 24th, as the sun rose over the ruins of Delphi, Nicholas did something that changed everything. He walked directly to a section of the temple that had been sealed off by archaeologists, and stopped in front of a stone that looked completely ordinary. "Here," he said simply, tapping the ground with his small foot. Exactly 2.3 meters down. Dr. Andreas Michaelopoulos, the chief archaeologist on site, watched with open skepticism. But when Nicholas began tracing symbols in the dirt with his fingers, symbols that matched Pythagorean inscriptions from the 6th century BCE, his expression changed completely. "I need you to bring the Herculaneum scrolls," Nicholas said, with an authority that froze the blood in everyone's veins. "The ones found last year in the secret excavation. My teacher wrote them before the fire reached the library." The silence was absolute. The Herculaneum scrolls were among the most confidential discoveries in modern archaeology. They had been uncovered in 1986 during a classified excavation, and only 5 people in the world had access to them. Nicholas could not possibly have known they existed. 3 hours later, Professor Kaminos arrived from Athens carrying a metal case. Inside were high-resolution photographs of the scrolls, text so ancient and damaged that even the world's best papyrologists needed weeks to decipher just a few lines. When the first image was shown to Nicholas, the boy studied it for less than 10 seconds. Then he began to translate, with perfect fluency. "The soul is an eternal fire," he recited calmly, "migrating between bodies in search of perfection. Those who understand the sacred numbers will find the path back to the origin. The initiated must protect this knowledge until the moment of revelation." Professor Kaminos' eyes filled with tears. That translation had taken his team 3 full months to produce, and a 4-year-old child had just delivered it in seconds, word for word, with a precision that surpassed even the finest academic work. But the most disturbing moment was yet to come. Nicholas pointed to a section of the scroll that appeared completely destroyed and said quietly, "There's something important missing here." "The rest of the text is buried where I told you," Nicholas said calmly. Exactly 2.3 meters beneath the sacred stone. The excavation began that very afternoon. What they uncovered defied every known rule of logic. At 6:30 p.m. on August 25, 1987, inside a makeshift tent set beside the excavation site, the most extraordinary session ever documented in the history of modern archaeology took place. Dr. Stavros had brought professional recording equipment from Athens. 3 video cameras captured every moment from different angles, ensuring that nothing would be left to interpretation or memory alone. Inside the tent were Professor Kaminos, Dr. Michaelopoulos, Dr. Tifakora, Sophia Evangelou, a specialist in ancient Greek dialects from the University of Oxford, and Dr. Marcus Weber, a German papyrologist widely regarded as the world's leading authority on Pythagorean texts. Nicholas sat on a chair far too large for him, his small feet dangling above the ground, staring at the newly unearthed scrolls with an unsettling calm. The texts were in terrible condition, so deteriorated that even under a microscope, much of the writing was nearly impossible to read. Then they placed the first fragment in front of him. Something extraordinary happened. Nicholas' voice changed. It became deeper, slower, measured, as if someone else were speaking through him. "Brothers of the initiation," he began, in flawless archaic Greek, "I write these lines as the fire draws closer to our school. Pythagoras has departed into the ether, but his teachings must endure. The sacred numbers reveal that the soul returns in cycles of 2,160 solar years." Dr. Weber, who had spent 3 decades studying Pythagorean writings, began to tremble visibly. "Impossible," he whispered in German. "He's quoting the secret Tetractys, a text believed to have been lost forever." But the most chilling moment came next. In the recording, still preserved in the archives of the University of Athens, a second voice can be clearly heard in the background. An adult voice, low, resonant, as if it were dictating the words Nicholas was speaking. Yet inside the tent, every adult stood frozen in stunned silence. "Do you hear that?" Dr. Evangelou asked, pointing toward the speakers. "There's another voice, but there's no one else here." Later analysis of the recording revealed something that sent chills through every expert who heard it. The second voice carried the phonetic characteristics of Greek, spoken in the 6th century. BCE, a pronunciation no modern speaker could reproduce with such precision. Nicholas continued translating for 47 uninterrupted minutes. Every word, every pause, every inflection, perfect. When he finally stopped, he closed his eyes and whispered softly, "My teacher says that is enough for today." But the most shocking revelation was still to come. In the early hours of August 26th, Nicholas woke his parents with a statement that would forever alter the course of Greek archaeology. "I need to go to the place where my teacher hid the final texts," he said with a chilling certainty. 847 meters northeast of the oracle, at a depth of 4.2 meters, there is a sealed chamber containing 23 intact scrolls. The numbers were disturbingly precise. How could a 4-year-old child provide coordinates with such accuracy? Dr. Michaelopoulos decided there was only one responsible course of action: take the claim seriously. Using ground-penetrating radar brought from Athens, the team moved to the exact location Nicholas had indicated. What they found exceeded every expectation. At precisely 847 meters northeast of the Temple of Apollo, the sensors detected a subsurface anomaly, a perfectly rectangular cavity at 4.2 meters deep, exactly where Nicholas had said it would be. Excavation began immediately. For 18 continuous hours, archaeologists worked without rest under Nicholas' supervision. The child directed the operation with an authority that sent shivers down their spines. "Be careful with the stones on the left," he warned. "That's where the sealed entrance is." At 2:15 p.m. on August 27th, the tools struck something solid. A marble slab engraved with Pythagorean inscriptions sealed the chamber. When the stone was finally moved, everyone fell silent. Inside lay 23 rolled scrolls, perfectly preserved, arranged in a circle around a bronze statue of a bearded man wearing a tunic. An inscription at the base read, "Philolaus of Croton, one of Pythagoras' most important disciples." "That's me," Nicholas whispered as he stared at the statue. "My body?" From then, Dr. Weber, skeptical until that very moment, dropped to his knees. The scrolls contained mathematical and philosophical texts that would revolutionize the understanding of the Pythagorean school, geometric formulas 2,000 years ahead of their time, and theories of reincarnation that modern science was only beginning to approach. But the 23rd scroll, the final one in the circle, contained something that forced everyone present to question the very nature of reality itself. It began with the words, "For the one who returns in the year 1987 of the Christian era, these are the instructions to complete the mission." The prophecy had found its recipient, and what was about to be revealed would push the story far beyond the limits of belief. At 4:45 p.m. on August 27th, the 23rd scroll was unrolled with extreme care. What it contained would permanently alter the lives of everyone present, but no one more profoundly than Professor Demetrios Kaminos. Written in flawless archaic Greek, The text began, "For Demetrios, my beloved disciple, who will return bearing knowledge of the future." You will recognize these words, because your soul once wrote them. The professor felt his legs weaken. No one in that room knew his first name. To the world, he was simply Professor Kaminos. The scroll continued, "In the life to come, you will teach ancient texts, but your true purpose will be to guide the child who carries my essence." The circle must be completed before the winter solstice. Kaminos began to shake uncontrollably. Then came the details. The text described a scar on his left hand, his lifelong fear of heights, which he had never spoken about. Even the name of his first childhood love, a secret buried deep within his memory. How can this be?" he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "How can this text know my life?" Nicholas slowly approached him. With heartbreaking tenderness, the child placed his small hand on the professor's cheek. "Because you were my closest friend, Demetrios," Nicholas said softly. "In that life, you wrote everything I dictated. Together, we preserved the sacred knowledge until the fire consumed our school." Kaminos broke down completely. Fragments of recurring dreams he had carried since childhood suddenly made sense. Visions of an ancient library in flames, a white-bearded teacher dictating texts as smoke filled the air. "I always knew," he whispered. "I always felt these texts were familiar." Dr. Weber recorded every word in silence. Years later, he would write that this moment was the most emotional and terrifying of his scientific career. "I witnessed a reunion of souls separated for more than 2,500 years. But the scroll still held more secrets." Its final section described the locations of 2 additional hidden chambers, one in Croton, Italy, and another beneath Alexandria, Egypt. According to the manuscript, both contained texts capable of reshaping humanity's understanding of the soul and its eternal purpose. Nicholas' mission was far from over. In the final days of August 1987, Delphi became the stage for revelations that would forever alter Western thought on reincarnation. Guided by knowledge beyond explanation, Nicholas led the team to a 3rd hidden chamber, located directly beneath the omphalos, the sacred center of the ancient world. At 6.8 meters below the surface, exactly where the child indicated, archaeologists uncovered what many would later call the most important discovery of the 20th century, the personal library of Pythagoras. Intact after more than 2,500 years, 73 scrolls lay preserved, containing the deepest secrets of the Pythagorean school, scientific descriptions of soul, transmigration that mirrored concepts modern quantum physics had only begun exploring in 1987, mathematical formulas linking consciousness to the structure of the universe, maps of ancient civilizations that possessed similar forbidden knowledge. But the central scroll, the longest and most elaborate, contained the doctrine of eternal return. It explained how certain advanced souls reincarnated during critical moments in history to preserve sacred knowledge. According to the text, Nicholas was not Philolaus' first return. He had come back before, as a scribe in Alexandria during the Great Fire, as a medieval monk preserving forbidden texts, as a Renaissance scholar safeguarding lost wisdom. "The soul of knowledge does not rest," Nicholas translated calmly. "It returns whenever humanity is on the brink of forgetting what matters most. This life is crucial," he continued, "because humanity is approaching a point of no return. The sacred texts must be revealed before it is too late." Dr. Michaelopoulos felt a chill run through his spine. This was no longer archaeology. It was a mission that had waited millennia to be fulfilled. The scrolls also revealed the locations of 12 hidden libraries scattered across the world, from Machu Picchu to the Giza Plateau, from Tibetan monasteries to submerged ruins in the Mediterranean. Each contained fragments of a universal knowledge capable, according to Pythagorean doctrine, of elevating human consciousness beyond anything previously known. Nicholas closed his eyes and exhaled deeply. "My work here is complete," he said quietly. But the true mission is only beginning. Humanity has 33 years to find and protect this knowledge. After that, his voice faded. The message was unmistakable. The countdown had begun. On September 3, 1987, exactly 1 week after the final discovery, something extraordinary happened. Nicholas woke up, a normal 4-year-old boy. The impossible knowledge was gone. He no longer spoke archaic Greek. He could not translate ancient texts. It was as if the ancient soul had withdrawn, leaving the child free to live an ordinary life. But the impact of what occurred reached far beyond the Christopoulos family. The discovered scrolls sent shockwaves through the academic world. Europe's most prestigious universities launched classified expeditions to the 12 locations mentioned in the texts. By 1990, sealed chambers had been confirmed at 8 of those sites. Then, a disturbing pattern emerged. Researchers began calling it the Delphi syndrome. Since 1988, more than 200 children worldwide began displaying impossible knowledge of ancient civilizations. A 6-year-old in Peru, speaking archaic Quechua while drawing accurate maps of Machu Picchu. A 5-year-old girl in Egypt fluently translating hieroglyphs. A 7-year-old boy in India reciting Sanskrit texts lost for millennia. Every case shared 2 things. Each child had experienced a trauma or accident beforehand, and every one of them mentioned the same deadline, the year 2020. In his final academic paper, Professor Caminos wrote, "We are not witnessing isolated cases of reincarnation. This is a coordinated return, a convergence of ancient souls with a singular purpose. The countdown toward something transcendent has begun. The mission continues." The full archives of the Christopoulos case remain classified within the databases of the University of Athens. Some texts have been partially released. Others remain sealed. And the question still lingers. Is human consciousness limited to a single lifetime? Or are some souls destined to return, again and again, until the knowledge is saved?